Hi, I'm Pushpa Naurim, and here in this video I'm going to discuss what is prisoner's dilemma. Prisoner's dilemma is a scenario in which the gains from corporations are larger than the rewards from pursuing self-interest. The story behind the prisoner's dilemma goes something like this. Let's consider there are two criminals who got arrested for robbing a bank together. Let's call them prisoner A and prisoner B. When they are taken to the police station, they refuse to say anything. So now the police have decided to put them in separate interrogations room. Eventually, a police officer entered the room where the prisoner A is being held and says, "You know what? Your partner in the other room is already confessing. So your partner is going to get a light prison sentence of just 1 year, and because you are remaining silent, the judge is going to stick you with 8 years in prison. So why don't you just act smart? If you confess to, we'll cut your jail time to just 5 years, and your partner will also get 5 years." And over the next room, another police officer is giving exactly the same speech to prisoner B. So what the police officer do not say is that if both prisoners remain silent, the evidence against them is not specially strong and the prisoner will end up only 2 years in jail each. The dilemma faced by the two prisoners is shown in this table. To understand the dilemma, first consider the choices from prisoner A's point of view. If prisoner A believes that prisoner B will confess, A will surely confess too, so as to not get stuck with 8 years in prison. But if A believes that B will not confess, then A will be tempted to act selfishly and confess, so as to serve only 1 year. The key point is that A has an incentive to confess regardless of what choices B makes. From the B point of view, he also faces the same set of choices. Thus, he will also have an incentive to confess regardless of what choices A makes. So, you see that here confess is considered a dominant strategy or the strategy an individual will pursue regardless of the other individual decision. The result is that if prisoners pursue their own self-interest, both are likely to confess and end up doing a total of 10 years of jail time between them. Means that A will get 5 years of jail and B will get 5 years of jail. The game is called a dilemma because if the two prisoners had cooperated by both remaining silent, they would have had to serve a total of 4 years, 2 years of jail each time. If the two prisoners can work out some way of cooperating so that neither one will confess, they will both be better off than if they each follow their own self-interest, which in this case lead into a longer term of jails for both the prisoners. So you see it from our discussions that the likely outcome for prisoner's dilemma is that both players will defect, meaning thereby that they will behave selfishly and they will act on their self-interest, leading to suboptimal outcome for both the prisoner. This is also called a Nash equilibrium, a decision-making theorem within game theory that states a player can achieve the desired outcome by not deviating from their initial strategy. The Nash equilibrium in this example is that both the players to betray one another, even though mutual cooperations would have had lead to a better outcome for both the players. However, if one prisoner chooses mutual cooperations and other does not, one prisoner's outcome is worse. The concept of prisoner's dilemma, it applies well to the corporate world. Now let's try to understand this with the help of an example. Let us consider there are two soft drink companies, let's say Pepsi and Coca-Cola, and they are competing in the same local market. To make sure one remains ahead of the other, they try to figure out ways to improve their sales. Hence, they apply the prisoner's paradox notion to decide where investing in advertisement is worthwhile or not. Keeping into considerations the event expected to occur, the possible outcome could be like this. First, it is possible that if both Coca-Cola and Pepsi do not advertise, it is likely that 50% of the populations will be attracted to Coca-Cola and other 50% to Pepsi. It means that there will be an equal distribution of revenue between the two brands, plus there will be no advertisement cost. Secondly, it is possible that if Coca-Cola do not advertise, but if Pepsi does, then 80% of the populations will go to Pepsi and only 20% will be left to Coca-Cola. Now you see that even though the revenue would be more for Pepsi, the advertising cost would get deducted from it. Again, on the third possible outcome, if Coca-Cola advertise and Pepsi does not, then you see that 80% of the populations will buy Coca-Cola and only 20% would be left to Pepsi. Though it will generate more profit for Coca-Cola, but the advertising cost would get deducted from it again. Okay, so in the fourth possible outcome, you see that if both Coca-Cola and Pepsi advertise their product, customer will split between the two brands in 50-50 proportions with the advertising cost deducted separately. Therefore, the revenue generated will now be equal. From this example, you see that the best thing for both the brands to keep up with the competitions would be not to advertise their products. However, as individual parties, they would find it more relevant to focus on their self-interest. Hence, both will promote their products even if the other brand is not working so good. Now, from this discussion, you see that prisoner's dilemma is a paradox where two reasonable individuals have to choose whether they are going to cooperate or betray each other in order to achieve the best possible outcome. It is a scenario where both parties will realize that acting in their own self-interest may not always lead to the best possible outcome. And to avoid this paradox, individuals can make effective decisions by considering various incentives, maintaining open discussions and communications, comprehending the consequences of both cooperations and defections. So, in this video, I have discussed about prisoner's dilemma and its example. So, I hope you find this video helpful. Thank you for stopping by.